Arc Raiders has a fascinating future ahead of it, one currently fighting the down period we're in ahead of the October update that's the next large update, all the while things like the Chinese beta are ongoing, showcasing exclusive content that I'm sure many are like, well, why didn't we get that? That makes this wait feel even longer. But in the meantime, we have heard some rather interesting plans about what's still to come, whether in the October update or beyond, maybe even before then, as the plans for the game don't stop moving, even if we haven't seen too much about it lately. Today, I wanted to take a look at a recent report from Screen Rant and an exclusive interview in which they detailed how Arc Raiders is getting some completely new Arc enemies, some that could prove to be massive in scale. So drop your thoughts as we go along, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay updated with all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content. We've got a lot upcoming in the next few months here that I'd love to have in the community for. And finally, check out my friends over at Advanced GG, where code Espresso can get 10% off your entire order, but more on that a little later. For now, let's get into it. So, in this interview, we learned about a few things. First, in a rough sense, that the 2027 roadmap is well into development and that there's hard plans for everything we'll see there. But additionally, it was mentioned new, very large arcs are planned for future updates. Alexander Grundal, executive producer on Arc, mentioned, I can't go into too much detail here just yet, but there are several new, very large arcs currently in development, both with familiar shapes and completely new. We don't want to make it too formulaic, so we're always challenging ourselves to think differently about these very large arcs. So when you think about it, there is a rather predictable rundown of what we've seen for the Arc enemies. Shredders, Comets, Fireflies, Vaporizers, the Turbine. As the Q1 roadmap being called Escalation would indicate, there was definitely a progression into the larger and larger Arc threats over the course of the first 4 months of the year. But we've seen some interesting scale, let's say. Back when we saw the Vaporizer introduced with the Flashpoint update, we had been seeing these teasers up until that point where Shrouded Skies gave us a UFO-style Easter egg. Now, many liken that to being the Vaporizer we eventually saw, others still aren't such believers, and there's still conflicting evidence that truly, I think it could go either way. There was a leaked arc a long while back that we've still yet to see that could be this in place of the Vaporizer, but the Vaporizer itself wasn't classified as anything crazy or a large arc. The initial marketing for what would eventually become the Turbines, though, that was marketed as a large archetype, but until we saw the size of that, we didn't really know what was considered large. Would it have been a Rocketeer, Bastion, Bombardier, Leaper, that type of like mid-ground, bigger threat but not necessarily overall dangerous, or would it be something that is large, like the Matriarch or Queen in scale? Well, it seems like the dubbed large they gave for the marketing was kind of a middle ground between those two. The Turbine is bigger and more heavily armored and equipped than the Bastions, Bombardiers, and so on, but also not as large or armored or equipped as the Matriarch and or Queen. So this mention of very large arcs could easily be of that scale, or do we think larger? Initially speaking, my mind always goes back to the giraffe-style arc that people have dubbed the Bishop from the pre-alpha days and in the in-development footage that we saw shared as a part of the Arc Raiders documentary. That seems to be familiar in scale in regards to sizing, seems relatively deadly enough with its Vaporizer-like blasts that it could be something that fits that bill, but I think a lot of people would also want to see things go even larger. And if it could fit that narrative of a long-term plan for the game to a degree with things like the Emperors off in the distance that you'll see on like Bluegate and stuff like that, something where a whole lobby could fight perhaps and something that could change the entire dynamic of the game. I mean, after all, it was mentioned the next map we'll see with Frozen Trail is going to be the largest map to date, so wouldn't that be cool to see that introduced at that point? Now, whatever does happen, I personally would like to see some new archetypes to these enemies. The mentions of familiar shapes and completely new make me think it is going to be possible to see something all new. But I mean, we've gotten kind of the core basic elements of the arc all played out at this point, right? Like flying, weak on its thrusters, rolling like a pop or fireball in a confined space or in an unconfined space like the Comet. The Turbine was really the only arc that kind of like looked a little out of the ordinary, maybe the Shredder too, but at this point when we see an update here, let's just assume the next stuff we'll see is in October. At the 1 year mark, I'm kind of hoping that at that point, we're not still following the same blueprint for every single arc as like a small, medium, and large flying arc or a small, medium, large rolling arc, something like that, that it's again confined or unconfined like you'd see of a pop or fireball versus a Comet. I'm hoping there's some sort of new unique elements there here to this. But But that said, there's one other thing that I want to mention here out of this. But before we do, a real quick heads up. We have partnered with my friends over at Advanced GG. Again, as we've mentioned, a bit under the radar the last few months, but now going into the summer, ramping that up more and more. Advanced is the healthier energy supplement option where I use it daily as my comparable cup of coffee. Currently drinking that raspberry lemonade. Magic Rainbow Sherbet's also another one that's one of my favorites, but I'd highly recommend, and we actually co-branded that along with a few other items on their site, like a 26-ounce ice shaker. But love this stuff. If you're looking for a replacement for your own cup of coffee, give it a try. If you decide to give it a go, code Espresso and get 10% off your entire order. But no sweat, appreciate you hearing me out on this, and of course, just checking out the videos. Now, back to it. Where do we go from here? As we know, the next major update is coming in October with a sprawling new frontier that's said to have a new landscape in the Rust Belt with layered design and new mysteries to uncover in the largest map in the game. It's also going to say we're going to have our most ambitious Arc operations so far, including new Arc enemies with fresh designs and unique behaviors that will challenge raiders in new ways, seemingly tying into what we just talked about here and what Alexander Grundahl had mentioned is planned for the upcoming future of the game. They said new systems of progressions, many players have maxed out their new raider den and hit the skill point ceiling. Frozen Trail will introduce new goals and more ways to shape your raider progression. Exploring the origin of Arc, what are Arc and where do they come from? Frozen Trail gives raiders the opportunity to begin uncovering that mystery, improve skill tree, and all that kind of stuff. But beyond that and whatever else may come at that time, it was mentioned by Grundahl in this interview, we want to create engaging new content that feels fresh, unique, and distinctly Arc Raiders. Our focus is to make Arc Raiders the best game it can be, and while we look at the competition, we want to make sure that we keep improving upon what's good and fixing what isn't. Player feedback is very much a part of our decisions here. Rather than chasing competitors, we're committed to making Arc Raiders great, and we're excited about its future. So while talking about this right now may not be the best time for the sort of optics of such a statement, as there's persisting issues and people are growing understandably frustrated with elements of the game, I do think it's a fair and nice sentiment to share. Obviously, we're here because we like the game. One thing that I personally felt from the start was the sense of uniqueness in aesthetic, gameplay elements, and the like that set it apart from other extraction shooter games. So for them to come right out and say, essentially, we've got a plan, we're not going to try and emulate anyone else here, we're going to stick to it, we're going to end up giving you some stuff here that is going to be uniquely Arc Raiders, I personally appreciate that, and hopefully we can see that turn into something larger. Now, I'm very curious to see how they handle the future here in regards to not only the content in October, but beyond, a sort of shift in mentality of trying to perhaps balance PvE versus PvP stuff, trying to accommodate a little bit of everything for everyone. It's tough to do, but of course, I'm very curious to see what they do in that time. Arc Raiders has had a rough last few weeks to months, depending on who you ask, and sure, we still have plenty of time until the October update, but fingers crossed it's what's needed to bring that magic back for players. And of course, on the way there, to make some meaningful updates instead of just having the next 4 months be an empty desert. That's also one thing that I'm hoping we have some stuff still sprinkled here and there. Like this past week's update with a new project and event is definitely nice, but it doesn't offer anything more unique in the way of like doing something completely different. Instead, you're just looking for new items, collecting those, and kind of going about your business, fighting Arc or other players depending on what you've already been doing. It doesn't offer too much to shake up the genuine formula of what we have for the core gameplay loop at the moment, and understandably so. Like, of course, if your big update is October, it's not going to be anything that is groundbreaking at that point. I'm just kind of hoping to see like more stuff for, I don't know, a blueprint too, or a new map condition, hell, a new raider deck, because we haven't had one since February. So like, I don't know, I'm hoping to see that the next, again, 4 months aren't necessarily as barren as they have been, because I feel like at that point, it is unfortunately very hard to come back from a lack of interest at that point for so many people. But I mean, I guess we'll see. So that is where we're gonna wrap it up. Just want to fill you guys in here on a little bit of some discussions here about some cool stuff planned for the future that I find fascinating, wanted to share with you guys. But let me know your thoughts down below. Drop your thoughts. If you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. Of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content. I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.